I also signed an executive order giving the Department of Defense and Department of Homeland Security the authority to activate the ready reserve components of the armed forces. This will allow us to mobilize medical, disaster, and emergency response personnel to help wage our battle against the virus by activating thousands of experienced service members, including retirees. We have a lot of people, retirees, great military people. They're coming back in who have offered to support the nation in this extraordinary time of need. And they come back in. They don't say how much. They don't say, what are we getting paid? They just want to come back in. It's really an incredible thing to see. It's beautiful.
Hi, everyone. It's A here, spreading the news, the truth, the real truth, and nothing but the truth. So, are you ready for martial law coming soon to your city? Most of you know that National Guard has already been put into use in places like New York, Washington, and California, I believe. But what you probably don't know is that the National Guard has actually been deployed, or activated, I should say, in all 50 states. So here is some news about the National Guard. From California to New York, Wisconsin to Texas, the National Guard is now active in all U.S. states and territories to help local governments contend with the rise of COVID-19 cases. If you see a National Guard member, it's understandable if you do a double take. Seeing people in military uniforms driving in big military trucks and walking around your neighborhood can, at first glance, be a bit disquieting. But if the National Guard is working near you, that means the governor of your state thought it best for some of your neighbors to help civilian agencies respond to the crisis. Anything that the law enforcement capacity normally does, they could be augmented with National Guard. General Joseph L. Lengyel, the chief of National Guard Bureau, said at a news conference this week. Asked specifically if they could be used to enforce curfews, General Lengyel did not rule it out, saying governors are able to use their Guard members as they see fit. So I don't know about you guys, but I'm not really liking the idea of that too much. Saying that the National Guard will be able to do basically whatever cops normally do under the orders of your governor, it's pretty scary.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
1945 and the end of the war through 1989 and the end of the Cold War, we had a worldview. Republican and Democratic presidents alike, from Harry Truman to George Bush, stood for freedom and stood for certain propositions that would make America strong and healthy and grow the middle class and shrink poverty and stand against communism. And after 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order.
To replace the ravages of war with cooperation if powerful nations, like my own, accept constraints. Sometimes I'm criticized in my own country for professing a belief in international norms and multilateral institutions, but I am convinced that in the long run, giving up some freedom of action, not giving up our ability to protect ourselves or pursue our core interests, but binding ourselves to international rules over the long term enhances our security.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order.
We've got to be very strong, very smart, and we've got to come together not only as a nation, but as a world community.
Because some of these people, this is a new normal. They're never going to go back home. So they want to help them as much so that they're never just walking out of here and feeling like they're going back onto the street. They work with them throughout the process here to help them adjust to this new world order that they're going to be living in after this.
Oh, and I imagine there's so many questions, so much concern, and all of those people. I love, it was almost like on cue when you're talking about the army of volunteers. A flock of nuns walked right behind you. I mean,
March 14th was an important day. That was the first day the presidential seal was not on the podium, nor was the flag behind the president, as you see in these pictures. And again, this was the first time there was no presidential seal or flag present. And this time, Trump is wearing a USA hat for some reason. The new podium sign says, "The White House," and underneath it says Washington. Now, Trump wears the hat. We have the new podium and sign. And as you can see in more recent, this was a couple days ago. This was the current one, which is Monday, March 23rd, where they were giving another update on the current COVID-19 operation. And that's what I'm going to call it from now on. You can find out a little bit more of my opinion on what might be happening by going to my website and looking up the article, COVID-19, the perfect Hegelian storm. And as soon as the president declared a national emergency, all those executive orders went under the discretion of the FEMA director. And that very next day, the presidential seal was gone.
Governors across all 50 states, Puerto Rico, Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Washington, D.C. have each mobilized components of their Army and Air National Guard to assist in their state's response to COVID-19 pandemic. In addition, 8 states have now approved the use of dual status commanders, giving them the authority to command active and reserve component troops under control of a governor. As a governor's response to the coronavirus pandemic continues to evolve, so does the Guard response. So see, yet again, we hear that the governors will be in control of these National Guard members, and they will be able to do whatever our policemen usually do. But given that this outbreak has been so crazy, we do see that our police officers are even starting to slack off and let criminals run wild. Let's take a look at some of these videos of military vehicles being brought into cities just since this outbreak.
Towards Chicago right now. This was... Chicago's about to go on lockdown. Holy moly.
It's some wild shit, dude.
Wow. Look how long that fur is, dude. I had at least 30 seconds before I turned my phone on to videotape this.
Nah, B.
What bastard?
I don't know. They're all armored.
I will be touching the back, so I'm just going to take this specimen, drop it in, take my gloves to my trash can back here.
And then each specimen, of course, is going to go
My gloves
into...
off, re-sanitize, come back over. Again, he's going to grab me a new test.
Any point in time, if you start to taste the stuff again, or the taste gets stronger, that means it's getting through your mouth.
Slow and steady.
I'm sure most of you already noticed when you go to supermarkets, meat, food, all this stuff is pretty much gone. Canned food, pastas, things that should last a long time are gone. Also, if you go to the butcher section or you try to get produce or you try to get eggs, ground beef, there's either a limit on how much you can buy or it's just completely emptied out. Now, we're hearing reports that the supply line is absolutely affected. This is why the military is getting involved. This is why, certain acts that President Trump has issued has been done, where you're going to have nationalization of industries, including our supply and production. Now, also, I'm getting emails and reports and video of people in towns and cities. They see military trucks, tanks coming through, getting brought through on the trains. You see the military vehicles coming right through to your area near you. Now, just a quick update on the viruses. New York City, the virus is like literally doubled, tripled overnight in the last 24 hours. Gavin Newsom of California has been saying that they're probably going to do a martial law. And a lot of people are asking about this, saying, no, only the president can issue martial law. No, states and governors can issue their own martial law in that state as a governor, just like they did with the Boston bombing in Massachusetts. If you recall, Massachusetts and Boston, they did martial law.
Well, we've been talking about this years, folks. Makeshift plastic coffins that have been collected in the Midwest and other places in the Northeast, Southeast. And now this, folks. We've been talking about prison barges, prison camps, and FEMA camps. This is a floating one, folks, and I don't think that they care anymore. Look at this. Look at this barge, folks. It looks like a floating jail, a penitentiary. It sure does. And two of these floated into Port Arthur. And let me read this article real quick. Because of Hurricane Harvey, there are some homeless people in Port Arthur, Texas that are thrilled about the temporary housing FEMA has hooked up for them. They're not too happy because the housing FEMA found them are barges. Yes, 3-story barges that are capable of housing hundreds of Hurricane Harvey evacuees. One of those displaced people is Gwendolyn Donahue. She is currently staying at a Red Cross shelter and doesn't like the idea of living on one of the boats. She was rescued from her home during Harvey, then transported from shelter to shelter. She said the last thing she wants to do is live on a barge on the water. I will say, I am not a fish, I'm not a crab, I'm not a shrimp, because I don't know nothing about being on a boat, said Donahue.
Seen the military vessels being brought into our cities. You've seen a small clip of National Guard training for this virus. And you've also seen people that are genuinely worried about martial law being imposed. Now the question is, what will bring about this martial law? What will the government say is the reason for us to need martial law? Well, if you notice, they're doing this nationwide lockdown. Number one, people aren't going to want to stay in their houses 24/7. There are going to be people that can't help but get out of their houses and go about. Now, here's the problem that arises. When National Guard is out there imposing that people stay in and lock down so that this virus doesn't spread, People are going to start facing consequences for coming out of their houses. And when that happens, more and more citizens are going to get emotional and worked up and scared, and they're going to riot. Okay? People cannot stay in their houses. Okay, so here's a clip of one example of a man in New York. He's driving around. He says it himself. He can't stay in his house for a very long time. You will see how empty New York is right now. And after that, I will show you some more about jails releasing inmates. But here's the clip of the guy driving in New York real quick.
This is where the ball dropped, and no one here. No one here. If you're watching this right now, let me know how bad it is for you guys where you're living. And we're about to approach Times Square, and I have never seen it this empty. This is like a deserted New York City. I mean, there's obviously still cars around, people still walking, but this is kind of insane to see. I mean, I've never seen it like this before. This is truly, like this pandemic is like affecting everyone, and this is an insane sight.
Here's some other news about inmates getting released from jails. We all knew this would happen, and here it is actually rolling out. The Washington Post says, disaster waiting to happen, thousands of inmates released as jails and prisons face coronavirus threat. The Fraternal Order of Police, yeah, frats, we all know what frats do, issued a statement supporting the decision, which covers all narcotics offenses, thefts, burglary, vandalism, prostitution, stolen cars, economic crimes such as bad checks and fraud, and any existing bench warrants. Okay, so I don't know about you, but drug dealing, theft, burglary, vandalism, prostitution, stolen cars, these are all pretty bad crimes that I don't want to have to go through without the help of police officers. Okay, people are going to read this, especially criminals, and they're going to think that they can just do whatever they want, basically. And they're probably right, because Philly has even said that even if they do arrest or detain somebody, they're only going to get their information before they release them right back into the city to run wild until, quote unquote, all of this is over, which we have no idea when that will be. Here's another article that says, amid fears that coronavirus will carve a deadly path through, prisons and jails, counties, and states are releasing thousands of inmates. New Jersey alone began freeing hundreds of people this week, and the federal prison system is coming under intense pressure to take similar measures. And in Mercer County in far western Pennsylvania, the county jail released 60 of 308 inmates, nearly 1 in 5. To free up 2 cell blocks for the quarantine of anyone exposed or infected with the coronavirus. Quote unquote, we're not putting low-level punks in jail at the moment, said Peter C. Acker, the district attorney. Wow, we're not putting low-level punks in jail right now. That's pretty scary. Here's Houston. In Houston, the massive county jail has stopped admitting people arrested for certain low-level crimes. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, people who usually spend their days fighting with each other, public defenders and prosecutors joined forces to get 75 people released from jail in a single day. And outside Oakland, California, jailers are turning to empty hotel rooms to make sure the people they let out have a place to go. Well, isn't that nice? They're not only letting our criminals out, but they're actually making sure that they have a nice hotel room to go to. That is just insane. And it is business as usual at the Escambia County Jail, where officials say that the Florida Supreme Court's steps to slow down intake has reduced population enough to maintain safe social distancing. Florida Chief Justice Charles Kennedy on March 16th temporarily suspended criminal and civil jury trials, grand jury proceedings, and jury selection proceedings statewide in an effort to reduce the spread of the new coronavirus. We've seen a little bit of relief from the courts as they have taken some very good measures to resolve quite a few cases and help reduce the population, said Escambia County Director of Corrections Rich Powell.
Not Hollywood propaganda, like you see in movies such as 2012.
California is going down!
God, you sound like a crazy person. The governor just said we're fine now.
The guy's an actor, he's reading a script!
So the gray state is essentially an artistic representation of real aspects put into a fictional format. Once you open your eyes and start looking at all these trends like RFID, like martial law, like FEMA, like executive orders, you have to act within your own capacity to sort of, talk about this. A lot of people filter that into the political realm. A lot of people do other things like grassroots style. I mean, I'm a filmmaker, Danny's an actor. So we put our heads together and we started making a project that would act within our own faculty to portray that in a creative manner. So there's a story here. I have to start telling a story. So I was looking for the next film project to work on anyway. I'm like, well, this would be perfect. And it's not really perfect because you have to kind of filter down all this stuff into a narrative storyline that's not just propaganda telling you what's going to happen next, like 2012 or A Day After Tomorrow. It's got to be a human story, and it's got to be enduring and compelling. The way we're different is we're independent, and we don't expect any participation from any studios just because of its contentious nature. I mean, anyone knows that Hollywood has not approached this topic so directly before. That's what makes Gray State so compelling. It's that different. Definitely the trailer is our best efforts to kind of show this world and expose these very real issues that exist in our world today.
David claims that Hollywood has never dealt with topics like RFID, internment camps in America, and detention. Instead, they have produced propaganda in place of real issues. When Hollywood does discuss internment and detention, it's almost always about World War II and the Holocaust. Literally thousands of films have been produced about the Holocaust, and yet one single film that addresses the potential for a Holocaust in the United States is stopped mid-production after its director is murdered. Seems a bit odd, doesn't it? It's a game they've played with the human race for years. They provide clues about the future to toy with us. They did it with 9/11. They've done it with other major catastrophes. It's called predictive programming. On occasion, though, they get outsmarted at their own game. What was David's hidden message inside the Gray State? And could it be the reason for his death? Perhaps the scariest part of Gray State's conceptual trailer is this character here, who appears to be operating a guillotine. David Crowley was very intentional in this frame of the movie. He added something that I believe he wanted the people to know about. Who is the identity of this executioner? If you look closely, you will see that this terrifying character is wearing something around his waist. It appears to look like an apron. The executioner wears a Freemason apron, complete with the all-seeing eye, the compass, and the two pillars. These are men with a radical revolutionary agenda throughout the entire world because they worship and follow a radical revolutionary deity. The first to have led a revolt against the Most High Lord.